We're going to be doing lesson 4-4 today, subtraction with negatives. And just remember when we're doing subtraction that when we were adding, we were subtracting half of the time. When one was a negative and one was a positive, we had these opposite forces. We had like a left and a right, or we can think of it as a down and an up, or an O and a half, and we subtract when we have those opposite forces. It was only when we had two like signs that we truly added. And so really subtraction is the same thing. We're already subtracting half of the time. We need to remember that a subtraction sign just means the opposite of. Earlier in this chapter, we already saw double negatives. We saw that a subtraction sign is just an opposite. So this is really minus -4, which we already know is 4. The opposite of a negative is a positive. This can be seen as a subtraction sign or a negative sign. See, they look the same. All minuses are negatives. All minuses are negatives. Not the same thing, or not opposite, but all minuses are negatives. So looking here, we are going to understand that all subtraction is adding the opposite. We're going to simplify any double negatives that are in the center. When I call it a double negative, it's when it's minus a negative. These two mean addition. We just saw that. This is the opposite of a negative, which is adding a positive. Those two signs cancel each other out. In math, two wrongs do make a right. Not in life, but in math it does. I am not negative. I'm not -3. Then I'm +3. And then the second thing we're going to do is rewrite any addition as plus, rewrite as addition. Rewrite as addition of a negative any subtraction. So rewrite subtraction as adding the opposite. These really say the same thing. This says it better. I don't know. I think this might be confusing. So first off, I'm going to just kind of scan this, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I have any double negatives. And what I mean by a double negative is not this. These are, this is not two negatives touching each other. This right here is the double negative that I'm going to be talking about right there. So that, whenever you see that, that's just some math teacher being cruel. That's really just -3 plus 4, written way confusing. And we already know how to do that. -3 plus 4 is 1. Because they're opposite quantities, we subtract, and the magnitude of the 4, the positive, is larger. I also see one right here. So I'm going to know that this symbol right here really is just a fancy way of saying 7 plus 1. So I'll rewrite the rest of that problem in a little while. But I at least know that part is just a cruel way of saying add 1. It's just a teacher being mean, trying to confuse you. Let's look at the other two up here. So this is going to stay -3. But where I have this -4, I'm going to rewrite that as plus a -4. All minuses are a negative. All minuses are a negative. Not all negatives are a minus, however, but all minuses are a negative. So that is really going to end up being -7. I'm starting at -3, and this would say go down 4. Down 4 would take us to -7. Okay, start at -3 and then go down 4 more, taking us to -7. Notice that even though this symbol here was a subtraction sign, when I go down and I go down, I end up even further down. I added. Okay, this is where it really gets kids. But if you think about it, it makes sense. I'm starting at -3 and I'm dropping down 4 more. Okay, that would put me at -7. Here, I am going to keep the first number and I'm going to think of this as being a -4. Okay, all subtraction is adding a negative. So I am going to be on this one starting at 3 and I'm going to be going down 4 again. And if I start at 3 and I go down 4, I'm going to go past 0 into the negative zone. So this answer is -1. Okay, I have more of the negatives than I have of the positives, leaving me at -1. We need to just do a lot of examples of these. Oh, here's just a Big Mac Daddy problem. So I'm going to rewrite all the subtraction as adding a negative. So this is -5 plus 3. I don't change that because that's already a plus. But this -10 is really plus -10, and then 7, and then 1. So I'm going to just add all the way up. This right here gets me -2. -2 and -10 gets me -12. Then I'm going to do -12 plus 7, which gives me -5. -5 plus 1 is going to give me -4. Finally. Maybe a better way to do that one. God, my work looks like a hot mess there. Maybe a better way to do that one would have been to add up all the negatives and add up all the positives. So I have my -5 and my -10, which is -15. And then I have the 3, the 7, and the 1, which is 11. So I added the 2 negatives. I added the 3 positives. Now I add those up, which gives me -4. I like my work doing it that way better. Okay. I got the same answer just going left to right, but it was just a lot more messy. Let's just do some more problems together. So I know that this is confusing, that it looks like a -10, but it's really adding a -10. It's going to be so helpful if you do this, because this is what my Algebra 1 students are doing today. They're adding like terms with variables on them. And they're going to need to know that this is -12x, because this is really a -2x and a -10x, which would give you -12x. So the sooner that I can train your brain that all minuses are adding a negative, the better that you're going to do in the chapters to come. Okay, so this one right here, I keep this number and I'm really adding -10, which gives me -12. I'm keeping this number and I'm adding -10. Okay, I now have a positive and a negative, so I'm going to subtract, and what I have more of is the negative. This one right here is a teacher just being rude. Just being rude. There's no reason they need to write it like that. That's just simply to confuse you. That is a double negative. Not a negative means that this is a positive. Crazy way of writing 12. Why couldn't the teacher just put 2 plus 10? Down here to D. Keep the first number. Rude teacher. Double negative. 8. Keep the first one. Make this -11. So that's -6. Keep the first one. Make that -11. Add, because they're like signs. Subtract, because they're mixed signs. Add, because they're like signs. Subtract, because they're mixed signs. Don't try to do it from here. Do the rewriting step as adding the opposite.